Have a good meeting.
Thank you, sir. It is April 13th, 2021, and this is the Policy Committee meeting for April. I would like to thank everybody who took the time to be on the meeting today and to hear what we have to say regarding the policies for DDSN that we'll be discussing today. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and it'll be done by unanimous consent, just like it has been in the past, and for the past several meetings. So I'm officially calling the meeting to order and ask that Miss at, what is it, 307?
Yeah.
And I'm calling the meeting to order at 307. So Miss Beck, would you please read the statement of announcement for us, please?
Yes, a meeting notice announcing the date, time, and place of the April 13th, 2021 Policy Committee meeting was distributed April 12th, 2021 to appropriate media and other groups or individuals who requested notification. The announcement and agenda were posted at the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs Central Administrative Office and on the website. The public has been notified that accommodations such as interpreters, mobility assistance, or other assistance will be provided to individuals with disabilities and special needs if requested in advance.
Thank you, ma'am. The next item of the agenda is the invocation, which I will give now. So let us pray very quickly. Dear Lord, grant us the wisdom that you would have us to have to help those with disabilities through the policy committee and through the policies that we will be dealing with today and as we do throughout the rest of this year and even before. Let us do our best to be impartial to all those involved and make every effort to be mindful of the taxpayers as we decide how the money should be spent. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. The next item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. So therefore, if I don't hear an objection, the agenda will be adopted as written. So I'm going to give 10 seconds for an objection. If there's no objection, it'll be as written. Okay, hearing no objection, the agenda is adopted as written. The first item on the agenda is disability and intellectual and disability waiver renewal service changes, and we're going to give Susan's going to be called on to do that for us now.
Okay, thank you all. I understand I have about 5 minutes to kind of give you an overview of where we are as staff working with DHHS on the intellectual disability and related disabilities waiver renewal. And just for reference, it is part of executive limitations that we provide any staff recommendations to the committee for changes to our existing waivers before we're making official requests to DHHS. So this is a working product, a waiver renewal. As I've stated before, it's been in process for a long time. There are lots of pieces. And so all the things at this point are kind of for conceptual approval and will be also presented at the commission meeting. So first, just for a point of reference, the timeline is in attachment A of your document that you have for the commission meeting. You don't have a document today, that's fine. But it does kind of review what I did at the brief in February, that where we are with the renewal is that DHHS is working on a good copy of a draft. And then in May, we'll proceed with presentation to their advisory committee, and the public input process will start. There's a formal requirement for that. And then obviously through the way of refining what's submitted as well as operationalizing any changes, we'll be working with the provider community to help kind of decipher that and make sure everything is practical. So we look forward to those opportunities in the future. So right where we are now, as far as improvements such as additions, removals, or increases, I'll kind of hit a high level. Those services, we are making some improvements. We're recommending improvements for respite care as a service in the waiver, to look at a daily rate for group respite in a licensed residential facility, as well as tiered rates for service provision when respite's delivered to multiple participants residing within the same household who need services at the same time. So that's a good advancement. We've done some data collection on that, and we think about 85 waiver participants live in a multi-participant household of 2 or 3 people. So that will be beneficial for those kinds of groupings. We're also recommending updating the language so that the waiver document reflects the participant or representative direction of respite care. So that'll be an update, and that's already in action. The document just needed some updates. Then next, we'll be recommending for you all the addition of in-home support, which is a service in the community supports waiver at the current time, and is also in place in this waiver due to the Appendix K flexibilities associated with COVID-19. And it's a replacement right now for personal care and respite. And because of that addition, there's a recommendation to replace adult attendant care. And there are about 45 people receiving that service, self-directed service, and a transition plan will be developed as required for all of the CMS waiver changes so that a smooth transition is in place to move folks over to in-home support. And then additionally, as I've stated in the past, the environmental modifications lifetime cap has not increased in this waiver for 20 years or so, maybe more. And so we've recommended an adjustment for inflation, market costs, in comparison to the available amount in the community supports waiver. So we're, of course, all these numbers are still under consideration, but it would move from a $7,500 per lifetime limit to $30,000 per lifetime. You know, it's possible it will be less than that. There's, as I said, it's still under consideration with DHHS, so they're looking at that from projections and looking at estimates. So that would be an increased cost. So those are kind of the current waiver renewal services. Additionally, through the process of going through the waiver renewal, we've considered, as I stated before, some improvements with residential habilitation to look at expanding the model definitions so that DHHS is able to pay DDSN for multiple residential services instead of just a single rate. To enhance the career preparation service so that there's a lower staffing ratio so that the intensity of the service can increase. That obviously would require a rate change as well. We also were working on the addition of an independent living skills service to replace adult companion, which is, this is a skills-based training service, so it will solve some of the problems we've had with delivery of adult companion. And then to support employment services individual, we'll be looking forward in a future amendment to focus on transportation related to employment. And then of course the commission asked for us to work with DHHS to explore adding animal assisted or hippotherapy as a service, so that's on the horizon, as well as the electronic monitoring service, so that will allow for that monthly service fee for some of these electronic assistive technology devices so that folks can maximize their independence in their least restrictive environment. So some of those services, like we said, or I said, have been suspended right now, but we believe that they're worth pursuing in the future as we approach the next amendment that has not been announced as far as the timeline. In the current renewal, back to that, as y'all have heard us talk about, we have these items called performance measures, which really match up to the 6 assurances that allow the federal government to make sure that waiver services are provided appropriately and responsibly by the states. And so we've undergone a lot of technical assistance working with the CMS contractor new additions and worked in partnership with DHHS to make sure those performance measures meet technical requirements, are doable, and that we have some projection of how we'll perform on those. We're also implementing a more thorough risk and quality management process with DHHS that will meet on a quarterly basis. And so we'll look at the data, we'll learn from the data, we'll remedy situations with the data. And so that will be done at a more proactive level than in the past. And so we've kind of got a couple things working together with that. Better performance measures that'll yield more reliable data sources and data collection, as well as analysis of the data. So those are all the major improvements. That kind of concludes my highlight for this moment. Do y'all have any questions?
If I don't hear any questions, that was the primary reason for Susan to give us that update, was if anybody, or you, Robin, for that matter, you can certainly speak to us if you have any questions, or Stephanie. But if we hear no questions, we're going to move on to the next item.
Yeah, I'm good. I don't have any questions.
The next item on the agenda is the anti-harassment policy, which we went through some last month, and we have some other adjustments to make for this month. I may have something to say, I don't know, depending on what Constance says, but I'm going to let her give us the overview of the updates that we made from last meeting to the harassment policy.
I have one question before Constance starts her portion. Was this policy brand new to DDSN, never in existence? Or
no, it wasn't brand new. It was just majorly updated, I think you would call it. It was actually rewritten, but there was harassment. There was a sexual harassment. If I'm not mistaken, Susan, it was in another policy. Is that correct?
So there were guidelines about harassment in, like, is it Liz, old handbooks, personnel manuals, and things like that. So the position of the agency was stated in writing. However, this is a new directive that was collectively drafted from a variety of other agencies who have similar policies, correct? Okay.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to get some background on that particular point.
Okay, go ahead, Constance.
Okay.
Roll, dear.
So the anti-harassment policy was on the policy agenda in last month. We did some revisions to the policy based on comments from the last policy meeting. We researched some of the suggested changes and the legal implications of those changes. The first change that was suggested, or one of the suggestions, and I can't recall who suggested it, was notifying the commission of the specifics regarding complaints of harassment and discrimination and sexual harassment. In doing research in that, we proposed to notify the commission, but to notify the commission on a limited basis. And the reason for that being is that the commission only has one employee. So technically the commission is only entitled to personnel matters related to that one employee. So our compromise was to include in the executive limitations policy language that said that the director would be responsible for updating the commission. I believe we put quarterly. The case numbers in regards to any cases involving anti-harassment that could include sexual harassment, retaliation, bullying, those type of things. So that was the compromise. That way the commission is still fully aware of what's occurring in the agency, but we also are cognizant of keeping the confidentiality of the employees at the same time. So Commissioner Malphus, I didn't know if you wanted to go like each comment and then let you guys ask any questions, or you just want me to go through the entire thing and wait until y'all questions are at the end?
We'll just have, well, we'll do each one. I'll just say, I'm assuming there's no questions about that, and we'll move on to the next one. Go ahead.
The next one was what a process that I would describe as basically reporting incidents regarding sexual harassment to a criminal authority. So I want to first remind the commission that we're not a criminal agency, and that this policy is purely an administrative policy. Our compromise in regards to that was that we inserted some language in the policy that basically stated the directive is not intended to limit in any way the right of an employee to report incidents perceived as unlawful to an appropriate policing authority. So we wanted to make it clear that the employee had the right and could choose to do so and report it to the police, but we had to stop short of requiring the agency to contact SLED and ask SLED to come in and do an investigation in regards to administrative policy. So that was the second item that was proposed as a change. Any questions in regards to that item?
What page is that on, Constance, of that?
That's on page 5 of the policy. And it's item 6. That insertion is on page 5, item 6.
Okay.
There's
Thanks.
also an item, there's also a page 6 thing that, sentence that says employees are expected to cooperate with both internal investigations and external investigations conducted by appropriate policing authorities.
Yes.
That basically covers that too, but I mean, it's the same. I mean, they're both in there is what we're saying.
Yeah, they're both in there.
That's about as close as we could get.
That's as close as we could get without crossing the line from turning this into administrative policy into like a criminal policy and basically making the agency become a criminal agency. Now, it's important to distinguish because there's a statute that requires us in abuse and neglect cases that we do report those to SLED. That's a statute driven. This is a purely administrative policy that doesn't require, we're going to administratively investigate what occurred internally in the agency. And then we're going to leave the criminal portion to the appropriate policing authority.
Right. We have to keep in mind it is an administrative policy. So, okay. Any other questions? If there's no questions about that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And the last suggested change really quickly was in regards to the 7-day reporting requirement. There was some suggested changes about, I can't remember what the suggested change was. It was something about requiring individuals to put their complaint in writing. I had my legal intern do some research. While we can request that they put it in writing, we can't require that someone put their sexual harassment complaint or any complaint in writing. If they come to HR and they express verbally that they've been sexually harassed or they've been bullied or they've been retaliated, that starts the process. We can then encourage those individuals to then put their formal complaint in writing. But even if they refuse to do so, we will continue to investigate as if they had put it in writing. I think it's also important to note that at some point in the investigation, their version of the event will be memorialized, because during the investigation, HR in conjunction with legal will interview all of the appropriate parties, and then HR and legal will summarize what those parties said. So there will be a writing in regards to what the person is alleging happened. And the suggested changes on page 5, sentence, it's also under section 6. So we changed it to say we encouraged individuals to complete the formal complaint form to assist DDSN in its investigation of the alleged violation within 10 calendar days. And once again, that's just an encouragement. We can't require them to do so. And I think that
did change that. Do what?
And I think that was all of the suggested changes that were made at the last policy meeting.
Yeah, the key thing there is we did change it from 7 days to 10 days, and it does say that, and I would like to ask that we enter under that section that we insert the word strongly recommend in that next paragraph about recommend they put it in writing instead of just recommend. It should say strongly. I would hope, if there's no objection from Stephanie or anybody else, that we put the word strongly in there to say we strongly recommend they put it in writing, but that's as far as we can go with that. And And the key thing is that it is written down if the person, when the person's interviewed, and they do have to agree to an interview. If they don't agree to an interview, then we can't go further because there's no evidence to the contrary. So that's where we can that's where that helps that, I think, strongly. So if there's no objection, Stephanie, I'd like to add, or Robin for that matter, since you're here, that we add the word strongly where it says encourage people to put it in writing.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
You there, Stephanie? I don't know, Stephanie.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here.
Is that okay with you?
Yes, that is fine with me. Yeah, I just hate we can't make them put it in writing, but you know, I understand.
We can strongly encourage anyway. Okay, well then we're going to add the word strongly onto that encourage. So that having been said, that may be the only corrections we had to it. So we need to, Stephanie, if you don't object to it, then we're going to move it. I mean, we're going to move this policy to the main commission meeting for approval next month. And at that point, it will be put out for public comment. And then we'll.
Mr. Chairman, do we have to, in order for it to go to commission with a motion and a second, do we have to send it out of this committee with a motion and second?
Well, we have. If we approve it, we have sent it out with a motion and a second.
Okay. Okay.
Because there's two members of this committee here right now, so we have done that. If we approve it, which we're doing, unless I hear you say you're not going to approve it, which basically says you're going to approve it, right?
I am.
Okay. Well, then it's approved, and we're moving on. So we're going to move to this policy as amended is going to be for the commission to approve at the next meeting 2 days from now.
Commissioner Melford, can I just clarify that? This one has not been out for external review yet. So if it leaves committee today, typically we would put it out for the 10 business day external review. Would that be okay to do that instead of going straight to the commission meeting?
I guess I think it depends what Stephanie thinks about that, because we could make it one more emergency policy here, and we could put it out public comment.
No, I don't think we need to do it in emergency. I say we go ahead and put it out regular for 10 days and let them give us comment back. Do we need to review it again after public comment?
We'll have to review it again. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's review it again next month. We'll
have to review it again if we accept any of those public comments. If not, it'll be exactly as it's written here. It'll just be discussing whether we want to accept any of those public comments or not. We certainly are not obligated to do that. We have no obligation whatsoever to do that, but we will consider their comments, but we have no obligation to put them in. So anyway, that's what we'll do. Then we'll just put it to the, we won't call it an emergency. We'll just put it to the public comment for next month, and we'll have it back on here next month to approve. Or after that, if there's any public comments I'm sure there will be public comments, but if there's not any, Susan will let me know that.
Certainly.
Sir, and you do need to let me know what public comments we get, obviously, Susan, on this one, please. This is kind of important. Or a little more. All of them are important, excuse me, but this one is more important than average. Okay, the next item on the agenda is, moving on, is the executive limitations policy. And we're simply making some adjustments to that based upon informing the commission, which is what Constance was just talking about informing the commission about discrimination related matters and harassment related matters on a quarterly basis. And
Mr. Chairman, we also need to address the issue of the spending limit.
Okay, we can. I was going to ask that too,
Yeah.
if we wanted to address that or not. But anyway, that's the first thing we're addressing is to inform the commission about it on a quarterly basis. And then the next item to ask about would be,
It needs to be a total contract value of 200,000, not 200,000 per year.
So would you like me to read the current language?
Please, ma'am.
Okay, sure. So I'm reading 3A, and it says, present to the commission for approval any contracts for procurement when the full contractual amount exceeds 200,000. And then the sentence goes on to say, excluding contract adjustments due to filling vacancies based on individual choice. So the key language there is full contractual amount exceeds 200,000. That's what's currently in place.
yeah,
That is currently in place.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That's was for some reason the one copy I had didn't have that in there. So I must have had the old copy. I just want to make sure the total contract value does not exceed 200,000.
Right.
I mean-
I think that's accurately reflected right now in this version. That is dated July 16th.
Okay. All right.
And keep in mind that when we get a new executive director, we can revisit this policy, and we probably will, and we can make that number less or more depending on what we want to do. I
have a question, Barry. What page were you on, Susan, when you read that policy?
Page.
Of 803, it's page 2 at the top, 3A. Okay. Or page 9 in your packet, excuse me.
Okay.
I was about to say that it was page 9 in the packet, but if you got a packet, yeah, you would have gotten a packet.
Yeah, I have it in front of me.
Okay. That's what it said since we've revised this thing twice since I've been on the board, at least. And this is the most recent version right here. I think it's twice. I'm not sure if I'm mistaken.
Wasn't there a discussion? Wasn't there a discussion of the adding a time within this particular item? Because it seems like you could easily go over 200,000 if it's a vendor that's, providing some type of service, like food service or whatever, that certainly goes over this amount. Is there any benefit in putting a time period around that particular?
Well, it's assumed it would be a year because that's because of our calendar. I mean, because of the way our situation works, it would be within a year's time is what it's assumed here. We can do that however we want to. The key thing to remember is if one of our contracts go over 200,000, it is no big deal for us to bring it up at a meeting and approve it. And that takes only seconds if we have an executive summary of that policy and approve it. It's very simple to approve contracts to go over 200. We don't do, again, I've said this many times and I'll keep saying it until I'm off the board. We don't do enough voting on our commission anyway, in my opinion. So it's no problem to me if any contract is $200,001 that we approve it.
We're having a little difficulty hearing you, Commissioner Malphus, on this end. I'm not sure if the rest of the group is, where it's kind of breaking in and out of every other word.
Sorry.
I can hear him okay. I don't have a problem.
Okay, that's good.
And I can hear y'all okay, so I don't know.
I'm not sure why that's happening. I'm sorry. I'll try to do better.
You can't help it. I just wanted you to know if we were silent, it's because we weren't understanding.
Okay. The other key thing is about that, like I say, is that we are happy to approve a policy over 200. So, or any amount we want to say. We could say any amount there we want to put. But If there's a food service went over 200,000 in a year's time, then we need we could add the words like in a calendar year under this contract if you want.
I just didn't know if it would be, smart to do that or not.
There again, it's assumed a calendar year, but it doesn't say it, so it wouldn't hurt to put it.
Commissioner Black, let me just jump in here. Maybe this might help.
Okay.
A lot of our contracts are 5-year contracts. A lot of our contracts at the regional centers aren't for specific purposes. They're more like negotiated contracts with fixed fees for services to be purchased, which we may not purchase. For example, we have a number of nursing and direct support contracts out there, 5-year contracts with a cap of $250,000, of which we may only spend $20,000 or $30,000 in a year. So if we open it to a generic all contracts over $200,000, we will be flooded with a lot of these contracts. If we carve our language down more specific, we can maybe cut some of that volume out and not hold up some of the, what I'd call smaller contracts just happen to have a 5-year large cap limit. And the other recommendation I would make for 800-03-CP is 3A. It's clear to me that you guys want to have a $200,000 threshold for all contracts. I think we just need to say that. And in the body of the current contract where it talks about excluding contract adjustments for filling vacancies based on individual choice, contract providers to increase capacity. I mean, all that is just woven into the bed vacancy language that kind of originated this particular 3.A. So I just recommend that we just make it, we could save that language for the end of the paragraph saying, look, anything having to do with individual choice pertaining to providers, it shouldn't be factored into the calculation. But
Right.
It's clear to me you want to see every contract over $200,000 a year, and we certainly can write that. I just want to write it in a way that we don't drag too much stuff in front of you that you don't want to see, and at the same time that you get to see everything you want to see. So I think it does need a little work so that we can carve out the type of contracts you're looking for, which are basically, in my opinion, would be, hey, if we have a contract where we think we're going to spend $200,000 this year, you guys want to see it. And that's a little bit more complex than some of the language you're talking about here, given the volume of contracts at the regional centers.
Well, Pat, let me ask you a question. This is Commissioner Rawlinson. Is there a way, for example, if we have a 5-year contract, okay, and you bring us a 5-year contract and you say, okay, this is going to be broken down over 5 years. It's going to be $250,000 a year, and it's a 5-year contract, and we pay that for 5 years. If we vote and approve that, that contract doesn't have to be brought back to us every year to look at. That we accept that contract because it was written and signed at one time. Do you understand what I'm saying?
That's
If it's
fine. That's fine.
Those kind of contracts are fine, as long as they've been through us. In my opinion, if we've looked at them as a whole, as a 5-year deal, that's fine. But if we're signing $201 contracts or $201,000 contracts, and then the next month is the next year, we're signing another $50,000 contract. I with the same people, I just want to make sure that it wasn't really a $250,000 contract, and that we just spread it out so that we didn't have to go get a commission approval for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll just give you an example. Like the first month we did this for March, we had 5 contracts that we approved that were 5 years, $250,000. And the $250,000 is just a ceiling that our purchasing procurement officer has.
That's right.
4 of them were for nursing and direct support, which
Right.
we may or may not ever use. And one had to do with like maybe dairy products or something. I mean,
Right.
I believe they're no big deal to run them in front of you. And I think it's appropriate. I just want to make sure that literally every month we'll have 5 or 6 contracts that we'll present to you, and probably the vast majority of them will fall into that category of just kind of like we're pre-qualifying a vendor to purchase off of if we so choose. And when you have that $250,000 cap, it gives the perception of, hey, we're buying $250,000 worth of nursing. We're not buying $250,000 worth of nursing. It's just an artificial ceiling.
That's right.
It just gives us the option. And if you want to see that, literally, it is no big deal. I just want you to be forewarned that you're probably going to get 5 or 6 commission meeting.
Right.
And we can refine that.
Let me say this about that. Why can't we say that we need an executive summary of each one of those contracts and then decide which ones we want to see before the meeting, before it's going out for the meeting? In other words, we could be emailed an executive summary of each contract, meaning like a paragraph, and then we could say, do we want to see that one or not?
That would be great.
We could say we want to see it unless we tell you we don't.
I think that would be great. Just so that you have awareness, and then we can deselect to the ones that I think are most relevant to focus our time. But we definitely can come up with something like that.
I mean, I don't even have a problem with the finance committee looking at it. I just want to make sure that, like I said, like if it's a big contract that we've approved the contract, I don't want to see it every month. But if it's something that's done 1 month and we're going another month out and doing another one, I want to know about the whole contract. I don't want it to be half this year and half next year and us not know about it. Does that make sense?
I see exactly what you're saying. I like the idea
I just think what we need to do is the executive summary, and then we need to let the finance committee approve the ones they can, and then
Yes.
and then go from there. I just think this executive summary will solve this problem.
I think so too.
Because if you have to get an executive summary on a month later, then you have to understand there was a $50,000 more spent or $100,000 more spent or whatever. And so then we would have a red flag to say, wait a minute, we want to see this. It just and if it's a food service contract, we're obviously not going to need to see it. So, but we just need that in an executive summary, and I think our problem will be solved. But we can talk about that for today. We can say that's what we'll do is making an executive. We'll have executive summaries for all contracts within a year, and if we want to modify that when we get a new executive director, we can.
That suits me.
Okay.
that's perfect.
Okay, good. All right. You got me, Susan, on that?
Let me just ask. I mean, we can go back and listen to the video, but
Go ahead.
Pat made a suggestion to change the language. I don't have that language, but I do have your addition that says something about, staff will provide an executive summary for all contracts within a year, and the commission will decide which they would like presented for approval or something like that.
That's what we're doing. That's exactly what we're doing. What you just said.
So you want to keep the rest the way it is and then just insert that?
Yeah, it just needs the word annual.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Within a year. Yep.
So we really don't need to. I mean, not that Pat didn't have a good suggestion, but we really modified that suggestion now to make it the executive summary.
I think we have that.
And the commission will talk about this more, and if we decide to change something else, we will. But for today and for now, we'll make it what Susan just said, and we'll bring that to the commission 2 days from now, because this does not need to go out for public comment. This is not a public comment issue.
Right. And our goal would be to send it out in the morning with those corrections, so the commission had time to review it prior to the meeting Thursday.
Wonderful. That's what we want to do. And then we can talk about it in the commission meeting if there's something else to talk about. Okay. The next item on the relating to the executive limitations policy is I may have done it.
Let me just catch you up where I am. I think there was a suggestion to swap between number 18 and 19 at the end just because of the
Yes.
flow.
Sorry.
And then also, there was a discussion last month about number 12, which is now number 13 in this draft, regarding the audit director. And
Oh,
so
yeah,
I thought y'all wanted to discuss that today.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you're right, so you do much better than me, thank you. That's right, that, obviously, that was the other big thing that I forgot to mention, Stephanie, is that, we're thinking that we're kind of, as far as how he reports to us, we're kind of, it's statute related now, and so we really can't change that without changing the statute, which obviously to say is a can of worms is an understatement, but so that's an entirely different process to change that. So we really think 13 has to stay like it is because of how it's statutorily written.
Okay. I see that.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We did investigate that and we discussed it. I mean, the staff did investigate that and discuss it and all that, but that's what the conclusion was. Not that I'd be opposed to changing it at all, but the thing is, it's statutorily in there.
Sure. I think all of us would be like to see it changed, but
yeah, but
it is what it is.
It is what it is for now, at least, yeah. Okay, so then that pretty much does, other than the grant, the federal grant change, we're adding that language in there so we can get rid of that, or is that, wait a minute, that's not another item. No, it's not. It's not another item. Well, that's right. I'm sorry. I'm going over the next item. No, I'm not. This is supposed to be the same item. We're adding that information in for the federal grant to permit the commission for approval for federal grant applications as soon as it's practical and prior to the actual receipt of funds. That would also be inserted in the under 3D for the executive limitations policy so that we can mark obsolete 800-03 CP.
No, we mark 10301, the federal grant application change policy, which is next. That's the number for that one. Sorry for any confusion.
Okay, that's right. Anyway, we're making that one obsolete. I get the wrong number. I got the wrong number. Okay, we're making that one obsolete and we're adding that sentence. So that's the other thing we're doing to the executive limitations policy, and that is it, I believe.
Yes.
Okay. So then, is there a motion to approve the changes as a whole to the executive limitations policy? Well, we really don't. If I'm going to stay consistent, I would say if there is no objection to leaving it as we've just discussed, if I don't hear an objection, it will be. So I'm going to give 5 seconds for an objection. If I don't hear one, it is. Okay, with no objection, it's approved, and we'll bring it to the full commission for approval in 2 days. And we're happy to revisit it as we are with any policy that we need to as time goes by, and will if we need to. Next item on the agenda is the appeal and reconciliation for the policies for DDSN. I'm going to call on Susan to talk to us about this. It is 53511DD.
Yes, so agenda item 4, this directive was approved at the last committee meeting and was therefore posted for external review for public comment. One set of comments was received from Disability Rights SC, again, formerly Protection and Advocacy. DDSN staff made the included changes and consulted with DHHS for appropriate approval. So we're presenting to the committee for approval so that we can present to the full commission meeting in a couple of days. The comments from Disability Rights SC were included in the document, and where possible we made changes just to add clarification in general. They just thought that perhaps we should be a little bit more specific about the DDSN decisions just to reflect the process with critical needs and the residential waiting list. They also made some additional comments which staff fully considered. We researched the code and determined that it was not required for DDSN to advise about the next step after an eligibility decision, for instance, which would be the administrative law court. Likewise, through our research, the Department of Health and Human Services, through their appeals process, does not include this in their decision letters. So we felt strongly about that was fair and typical. And then another additional comment was made just for clarity that there was some switching back and forth of days versus calendar days. So staff considered that and determined for consistency that we would use all references to reflect calendar days, just to make it simpler. So those were the changes that we recommended. And again, we reflected those through the document and have already discussed those with the Department of Health and Human Services, and they concurred with those changes.
Okay, if there's no objection, we're going to move those changes on to the commission. Okay, hearing no objection, they move on to the commission. Since they have been out for public comment, obviously. The next item on the agenda is number 5, which is conflict-free case management. And I'll just let Susan tell you all about the difference between the 30 and 60-day change that we made in that.
Sure. So thank you. The directive, again, was submitted for external review for public comment after your committee approved it in March. One comment was received and taken under consideration. And so therefore, in page 2, which I believe is 26 of your package, we adjusted the timeline from 30 to 60 days. So the sentence reads, any individual who chooses to receive a direct service from his or her case management provider is newly admitted to that direct service must transition to a new case management provider as soon as possible, but no later than 60 calendar days from the admission to the direct service. So we discussed that internally and felt like that was fair, and discussed that with Department of Health and Human Services, and they also concurred with that change. So we would be recommending for y'all to approve that so it can be presented for full commission approval on the 15th.
It just asks the providers to give more notice, which is good for individuals. So if there's no objection to that, that's going to move on for the commission to decide. I mean, to vote on. Okay, hearing none, we move on to the next one, number 6, which is safety procurement for medical and dental treatment. The directive was approved in March and submitted for external review. There were no comments received, and so we are going to, or none that we wanted to take up. I don't think there was any at all, but if there was any, we didn't take them up. So we are bringing that to the commission for approval. And if there's no objection to that, if I don't hear objection to that, we're going to move on to the next one. No objection to that. We're moving on to the next one. The next one is section 2, which is relates to procedure for implementation of DDSN provider, audit policy, which is and the procedure for implementation of DDSN policy for contract services. And we are referring that to the policy committee. Susan, is that correct?
You mean the finance committee?
I mean, sorry, finance committee. Susan, is that correct?
Yes, because these are audit related, we felt like those were, well, staff recommend to you all that they be referred to the finance and audit committee.
Yeah, I mean, Susan, Robin, you're on here. So if you don't have if you have any objection, we'll keep them. If you don't, we'll move them over. We certainly don't have to. He could visit our committee as well as yours. Don't matter to me.
Yeah. No, I think it makes sense to send them over to the finance committee.
Okay, if there's no other discussion, those two will move to the finance committee. I have no problem with that either.
Okay.
So, okay, that's moved on to the finance committee. Since I heard no objection, section 3 is updated for the Freedom of Information Act. Susan, you want to take that for us?
Certainly. So staff made changes that were presented to the commission at the March 18th meeting for emergency approval. Upon approval, this directive was then posted for 10 business days for the external review. No comments were received to date, and the external review period had ended April 2nd. So just to recap, at the March commission meeting, if no changes were made, the directive didn't need to go back to the commission meeting for reapproval, but the commission asked for a report on this update to be included. So that's the recommendation, is just to inform the full commission that this directive went out for external review, there were no comments, and so the current approved edition would stand without the need for further approval.
Right, and I'll say that at the commission meeting that that one goes as approved before, because it was, if you all recall, it was an emergency approval that we did, and there was no other comment, so it's stayed approved. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I did have one additional update, if you'll permit me. One of the directives that came through committee was 33402, which is use of DDSN regional center facilities by outside groups and off-duty employees. And of course, that was referred to staff with consultation from Commissioner Malfris on some specifics. Then it was posted for external review. No comments were received, so this should be ready for the policy committee report at the commission meeting in 2 days. And that concludes my updates.
Okay, if there's no objection to either one of those, they are, that's what I will be saying at the, what happened?
Wow.
Huh. If there's no objection, I'll be saying that at the commission meeting, that those two will be approved with no comments. And so, I mean, had external review and had no comments, so they will be asked to approve those at the meeting as well. So, if there's no other information to come before our committee, which now is the time if you know of any, the next meeting will be May 11th, and we'll move from there. It'll likely be the same, the second Tuesday on May 11th. May 11th is the second Tuesday, and I have no reason to believe it won't be the second Tuesday next month, as of now, God willing and all that. So, is there anything else come before the committee? If not, we are thankful that it's only 4 o'clock and we're done with the policy committee meeting. Except, and that's that for the next 2 days. So, thank you very much, Robin, for your attendance.
Yeah. Glad I could.
And Stephanie, as always, and I'll speak to David about any of these things he wants to ask me about since he's not here. I'll make sure I speak to him before the meeting, and we'll go from there as the other member of the committee.
Sounds good. Let us know if you need anything.
Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairman.
Have a good day, all.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.